Your problem is that you're very nice, but you want something, and you think being nice is going to give it to you, but it never will. And until you figure out what it is you want, every kindness of yours will be full of that want, like mine is. We Know the Devil is a tough game for me to make a video on. Maybe it would be better suited to like an essay on Medium or something. You know, apart from the footage being boring to look at because it's mostly static images and the plot just being kind of generally inscrutable and full of spoilers, the fact is that my thoughts on the game are wrapped up in some really seriously personal stuff. And that's prevented me from conceptualizing a script on the game over the past year or so. I've tried several times, and I just haven't been ready to share that much of myself, honestly. And I think now I am ready. We Know the Devil is about a lot of things. It's about three teens stuck at a crappy Bible camp who have to kill the devil. It's about genre fiction and how subgenres and tropes overlap and bleed into real life. But mostly it's about being young and queer and transgender. And, you know, as it happens, I am young and queer and transgender. And, you know, this is where things get personal, right? When I first played this game about a year ago, I had known that I was bisexual for several years, and I just started like recently questioning my gender, so identity stuff was kind of coming to a head at that point, and as such, I was totally desperate for any media with any queer or trans themes that I could latch onto. Meaning, anything that even remotely resonated with me or reflected my experience in some way, because there's not a lot of that, and a lot of what does exist is bad, really bad. So in that way, it was pretty rough. But then along comes this little visual novel made by a couple of writers and artists who I already followed on Twitter and liked, who are also queer and or trans, and it actually starts generating buzz and attention. People around the internet are saying that We Know the Devil is this really gay game, this mercifully gay game, and it's beautiful, and it's affirming, and it affects people, and well, hey, maybe it could affect me, right? Maybe it could help me feel like I'm part of a community that I'm totally not a part of right now. Maybe it could help me to understand things about myself and my identity and who I want to be. Now, to reiterate, this is a small visual novel made by primarily two people with a small team. So, like, it didn't stand a chance, right? When it came time to measure up to my expectations, We Know the Devil did not stand a fucking snowball's chance in hell. And I knew that. I knew going in that my mindset was messed up, and that things were gonna go wrong for me when I played, but I couldn't help it. I just had way too much writing on this experience. It was too important to me. But here's what happened. What I discovered was that We Know the Devil is actually a very smart game that knows its audience exceedingly well. And in a way, it kind of feels like it anticipated that I'd go into it all fucked up, and it managed to deal with that. And I want to talk about how it was able to do that. So my first couple of playthroughs, what very predictably happened was I'd start the game up, click through a few lines of dialogue, and just feel bummed. I felt cut off from the characters and the world. Something about the way it looked, or sounded, or smelled evoked a barrier separating me from everything. I couldn't figure out why. It was really frustrating. So I'd go into the game feeling tuned out, I'd try to engage, I'd fail, and then I'd get all weird and cranky, which did feel appropriate given the whole teenage angst thing that runs through the intro. So because I felt kind of lost, my defenses went up even higher than they already were. I retreated into the safe, warm bubble that is media criticism, and I set about picking the game apart in an attempt to understand why it made me feel so weird inside.
Here's a small sample of what my thought process sounded like. The dialogue, as far as I can tell, is supposed to be very, very well written, but it feels terse to me. It confuses me in a way that reminds me way too much of real-life experiences I've had. I've heard praise for the game's world building, but why is it all so slippery? Whenever I feel like I've got the setting pinned down in my mind, it'll escape and skitter away like a frightened animal. I know the game has some very interesting things to say, but I thought it would give me more tools to reconcile its queer politics and its anime references and its heavy religious imagery. And the game's central mechanic is supposed to be about pairing characters together, but none of the pairings are even very interesting to me.
Basically, I didn't know, excuse me, what We Know the Devil was trying to do, and I didn't get what it wanted from me. So why make time for it, right? Why play and replay a game that you don't feel any particular connection to? Well, if you remember from a few minutes ago, I was really struggling with gender when I was first playing the game. Still kind of am, just less so. Point being, in the game, there's this character, Venus. She's one of the three main characters, and she is a transgender girl, but doesn't realize it yet. Which, by the way, is not a spoiler. If you know what to look for, it's like super obvious. So I'm sure you can see where this is going, right? I was also a transgender girl who wasn't sure if she was a transgender girl.
So Venus is very shy, and she tries very hard to be nice, but she's kind of the worst, and I love her because I was a lot like Venus when I was her age. Parts of her personality read an awful lot like a greatest hits of Alex's teenage years, right down to the effortlessly soft hair. That's a sentiment I've heard echoed a lot across the internet, but that doesn't make it any less special, or any less existentially frightening. Like, this game's got my fucking number. Hilariously, I did not pick up on the fact that Venus is supposed to be trans my first time around, but I related to her really super intensely anyway, so both at the time and in retrospect, her presence in the game turned out to be very important for me.
So, my identification with Venus paved the way for a turning point in the way I understood the game. Because as I got further into the story's branches, as I started getting to know some of the characters a little better, I found myself relating to more than just Venus's personality. I related to her general sense of confusion, to the way she reacts to her world, if that makes any sense, in a way that transcended the threshold between me and the game.
Venus can't understand the emotional subtext of her friends' conversations in the same way that I couldn't parse the game's unusual dialogue. She struggles to understand what her society wants from her in the same way that I felt stranded by the game world's vague rules. What Venus really, really wants is some kind of self-actualization. Deep down, she cares about this more than she cares about her friends, and all I wanted out of the game, selfishly, was to see Venus actualized so I could feel a fraction of that actualization with her.
Jupiter and Neptune are nuanced, well-written characters who I did not care about, because I was being just as self-centered as Venus. Like, we're not the same person, right? Venus is fictional. But when your opinion on the mechanics of a game, or the world design, or something, are echoed by a character who is written by the author, you kind of have to reevaluate things a little bit. Venus as a character felt like an invitation to not be okay with everything. The game's way of giving me permission to feel frustrated and confused in the way that I was feeling, and to actually grow closer to the characters in that confusion. In that sense, the game was kind to me, which was exactly what I needed to just chill the fuck out and start giving the game a chance to affect me. You know, maybe that's coincidence, right? Maybe that's something that just happened within myself. Or maybe We Know the Devil has some seriously good narrative design. So by this point, we're like several months after the game's initial release in September of 2015, and the barrier's gone, right? My expectations have finally melted, and I'm replaying to get the endings I didn't get initially, and as I'm seeing all the parts of the game again, I'm realizing that the nitpicks I had way back in 2015 are like actually totally the best parts of the game. Yeah, the game world's nebulous and ill-defined, and that's great. Like, okay, if I have to read another book, or watch another movie, or play another video game where half of the world building is like in a wiki, I'm gonna be fucking sick, dude. I'm talking all over my keyboard.
Like, I understood intellectually that if We Know the Devil went any faster with its world building, or if its little hints were any more explicit, it would be just like every other text-heavy indie game about being gay, you know? But when I went back and played more closely, I could feel that mechanism in action more. Like, I've never been unnerved by the concept of a radio before. The game manages to extract tension out of things that are mundane and safe in a way that would be ruined if I explained it anymore. All you need to know about this game is that the members of Group South are the best designed side characters of all time. Just aesthetically. And the genre stuff that messed me up before is actually really interesting after I took the time to understand it. Like, I really misunderstood the character pairing mechanic at first. I thought its purpose was to place the game in the tradition of a lot of visual novels, which are often about shipping your character together with a love interest, but it's actually like a total subversion of that. This game is not just about pairing together two characters you like, it's totally about the third character who gets left out. We Know the Devil uses the mechanics of a typical visual novel to explore how exclusion works, and I even knew that going in, and I still played right into its hand. I was willing to throw Neptune and Jupiter under the bus if it meant seeing Venus happy, which is totally missing the point of the entire game. There's so much going on here. There's so much going on in We Know the Devil.
Which makes it that much more upsetting that it took me so long to, get over myself and start enjoying the game. Like, honestly, okay, this isn't my mega favorite game or something, like I'm kind of making it sound. I'm playing it up a little bit because I'm really excited about the script. I think it's turning out pretty well so far. And I actually even still hold on to some of the criticisms I had way back in my first playthrough. But why all the fuss, right? To be clear, like, why did my emotional dialogue with this game have to be a goddamned arc? Well, I already gave the short answer, and, that's that I needed media to help me process my confusing feelings, and there wasn't a lot of it, so when something promising came along, I put my egg in that basket, so to speak. But the problem is really a lot bigger than that. As important as it is to, vary your media intake or whatever, it feels good to hear stories that are about you, or stories that are written for you. It makes you feel like more of a person. And the truth is, for a lot of people, those stories just don't exist. It's been said, but it's totally worth repeating, right? Many queer people, many trans people, many marginalized people in general, have a deep, deep hunger to feel represented in media, in the world, to have a point of cultural reference. We Know the Devil is authentic because it knows that hunger. It is about that hunger in many ways, and regardless of how you feel about it, whether you enjoy it, whether it resonates with you or not, it is designed for people like us, by people like us. And as simple as that is a truly subversive thing.
Hey, so thanks for watching, hope you liked it. I'm proud to announce that my channel is all about gay shit now. Sorry, gamers. Just kidding. I'm not, well, I don't know if I'm actually kidding. We'll see. But I mean, okay, now that I'm a little bit more public about my identity, I'm sure that I'm going to be tweeting about it constantly, so follow me on Twitter, @AlexandCrackers.